What are we talking about today? Ooh, that was nice. Wow. Okay. Wow, this is neat. I like it loud. Okay. 5 days. Professor, Germany, first case. Professor, America. Professor, England. Professor, Yale University. Who did more for Lyme's than anybody else? 2 women, non-doctors, that lived in Old Lyme, Connecticut. They did the research that made this all happen. And that's what I thought was so interesting, because I like to do the history. And I should remember their names, but I don't. I apologize. But what was interesting, my wife is from Connecticut, and the family had a cottage at Old Lyme. And when you see it, it's pretty remarkable to see what we're going to talk about today, because you are in the environment for ticks. Everybody with me? Good. Okay. Let's see. You guys ready for my joke?
Sir, may I ask you a favor? Could you move, since you have a microphone, would you mind moving that flipboard closer up here?
Oh, sure.
I just can't see that far. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Thank you very much.
I scribble.
That's all right. Thank you. Oh, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so you ready for the joke?
Yeah.
Why don't crabs volunteer? Tick, crab, get it? Why don't crabs volunteer? They're shellfish. Come on, that got you ready for Lyme disease. All right. Sesame seed. How big is that? Pretty, okay? I'm not a good drawer, but it's something like this. And then they got black legs, and they're kind of brown. Does that look like a tick? That's not a bad tick, okay? From here to here takes 36 hours. This is the tick that bites you. That's how big it is. And then as it sucks your blood, that takes 36 hours to occur, okay? What's the only thing that can protect you when you're out in the wild? That's an H. So that's what I do when I can't spell. Okay? This is the only lotion out there that kills ticks. Okay? Now you're going to read about repellents. They say spray all this stuff before you go out. Repellents don't kill. This kills. And there's statistics that show this is safe. For animals, for people, you don't have to worry. All right? But, here, let's go from here. I have to give you a little bit of the physiology so you understand it. All right, so 1883 in Germany, there was a rash. That's how it was first noted. By 2015, heart, brain, and I'll put psyche, joints, fatigue. Okay? And why is there such a difference in all this time in the symptoms? because no one was really looking at the extent of Lyme's disease in the world. $500,000 cases a year. That's a lot. Okay? And I don't know about you guys, but when I pull in my driveway at night, I live on a farm. I have at least 40 deer in my front yard. I go to Encompass Swickley, I pass 40 deer as I go up there. And why we don't get rid of them, I've lost 4 dogs. I used to raise German Shepherds. I've lost 4 dogs to Lyme's disease. And they all were vaccinated. Follow me? It's a problem, and no one's paying attention to it. So here we go. So what happens? We have a Borrelia is the bacteria, and I'm gonna spell his name wrong, so I'm gonna scribble. Okay? This was the doctor that 1980 identified all this stuff, and so it's a Borrelia burgdorferi. That's how it is. That's the G. I spelled it right. All right? This is the name of the species and the bacteria. What's special about the bacteria? It has 2 cell walls. Okay, so when we try to kill it, it's hard to kill because of the cell walls, plus it's what's called a spirochete. What's that mean? That means that within these 2 walls, it has the ability to move. And it's also harder to kill. Okay, so I want you to understand this as we move forward. So you recognize that this is part of the Rickettsia family. Anything that has a spirochete is tough to get rid of. Rocky Mountain spotted fever was one of the things they researched to help figure it out. All right, does everybody follow me? You have to at least understand that physiology. All right, so now let's go back to save some paper. Our dates. 2007, I had a case of Lyme's disease that was difficult for me. It was a patient that had multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, and Lyme's disease. And what happened was her husband, great guy, did his own investigation. And he found that the bee sting, what was in the bee sting, bolstered her immune system to help her because she was neurologically involved. And so he stung her 10 times a day. But it worked. And when I saw that, I looked into who's the expert in the area. And it turns out it's a guy I went to medical school with. His name's Joe Joseph. He's up in Harmony, PA. And amazingly, when I spoke to him in 2007, he said, how many cases are you diagnosing a month? And I said, a month? I said, maybe a couple a year. And he says that's malpractice. That's what he said to me. I go, what? He said, you're sitting in the hotbed in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And it amazed me because the numbers, 500,000 cases a year, in Lyme, Connecticut, they get 50,000 cases a year. And that's down from 150 10 years ago. And what did they do? The permethrin, they put it on their clothes, they wash with it, they put it everywhere. Before they go out, they make sure they have boots on with socks on because the ticks live in grassy, leafy areas. So if you're walking through the woods and you hit a tree branch to get out of your way, that's when the tick can get to you. Does everybody follow me? Okay, and where are they? Think of a farm. What animals do you see on a farm? They talk about it's just a deer tick. That's not the case. Chipmunks have it. Squirrels have it. All the animals we all see, they all carry it. So what does that mean? That means that if you're walking by in the woods and there was a squirrel up in the tree, and now you move that branch, if it falls on skin, it starts out, remember that little dot? But after 36 months of feeding on you, it gets pretty big. And if you see it, you gotta take it out, but you don't squish it. Does everybody follow me? You have to make sure you pay attention, guys. If you're going out in the woods, be certain that you protect yourself. And then what are the recommendations? So we're gonna say, now that we know this tick likes wooded area, grassy area, and don't think of just deer, dogs, cats, cows. I mean, anything you're gonna see on a farm. And then some. So the ticks are everywhere. If you have animals and you're not checking your animals for ticks when they come in the house, you're missing out on the most likely source of the tick getting to you. And all you have to do is brush them out, okay? And if you find the tick, remember you have 36 hours before it becomes infectious. Does that mean you take it out, you have nothing to worry about? No, talk to your doctor. Because chances are they'll give you at least 3 days worth of antibiotics just for prophylaxis to make sure you don't get it. But everybody understands that. This is the perfect setup. Now, of course, you guys aren't walking through woods, but just walking through the grass. If the deer are out in that grass and they lay down, which they all do, when they get up, there could be a tick there. So if you're walking through in sandals, you can get the tick. And the bite you're not gonna feel. Remember, it's the size of a sesame seed. So the only thing you're gonna notice is you're gonna get a red dot initially. And then if you see the tick, by the time it's there for 36 hours, it's pretty big. Does everybody understand that? All right, so now what happens? What's that? Think of a dart. Bullseye. That's the rash. Erythema, migraines. I've had it. I've been bit by a tick. What's amazing is I never felt it. I was swimming and we were playing volleyball. The kids were all home. And I jump up. Dad, what's under your arm? I said, I don't know, I can't see it. What is it? And sure enough, that's the most common place is under the armpits. You know, they like to climb high. They like to get up high. So it's usually above the waist, high. But if you're out walking in the woods, it can also get to the legs. They go to the highest part, that's in the groin area. So again, you don't feel it, you don't know it's there, but all of a sudden this rash shows up, the erythema migrans. And that's where the 2 women from old Lyme realized, like, look, something's going on. They all have this rash. And that's how they identified it. 2 women set this all up. And neither one of them, they were, what did they call themselves? It wasn't housewives. I forget the word they used, but it was pretty good because I read the article. Yes?
I know a couple people who've had some variation of Lyme disease and they did not have this bullseye rash.
Sure, not everybody gets it, but that's something to look for that you definitely have it, okay? Good point. So what happens, there's 3 stages. First stage is tired or fatigued. Low energy, same thing. Plus or minus rash. And some people notice stiffness in the joints. Stiffness, remember, that's the first stage 1. Okay, in that time, if you knew that you got bit by a tick, I would say, how long has it been? Maybe 20 years. So 20 years ago, people didn't even pay attention. They're out in the woods, they got bit, sloughed it off, they don't even think about it. At least now people are aware and they pay attention. If you find a tick or if you have something that you don't know what it is, talk to your doctor, or go to an urgent care. But the bottom line is that the stage 1, a lot of us are tired and fatigued, a lot of us have low energy. The stiffness and the rash are the things that you have to pay attention to. So even if you don't think that you were exposed to a tick or were around animals that would carry a tick, I would suggest, because we're all living in this area, and you specifically on campus, that if you have some type of a rash and stiffness in joints, it's a blood test. It's called a Lyme's titer. And all you gotta do is tell your doctor that you live on campus, and they'll understand why you want to get that done. All right, now again, stage 1, this is between, I think it goes 3 days to 3 weeks. And this is from the time that little sesame seed goes to a tick bug itself, and ultimately in that time period, those symptoms you may see, all right? Once we get to stage 2, now we're talking about 1 to 2 months to 12 months. And over that period of time, rash, more likely, but it might not be there. And now the joints become painful. The fatigue gets worse. And in stage 2, we see memory changes. People call it a fog. Okay? And then the other thing that we can see is palpitations. And in this one, same thing. In this time period, you look for the Lyme's titers. And then basically, because you have the palpitations and the memory problems and the joint problems, we usually get a scan of the brain. We usually check the heart out thoroughly with what's called an echocardiogram. And when you have the joint pains, there's different blood tests that we can get to tell us different types of inflammation. One's called a SED rate, one's called the C-reactive protein, and these are tests that'll show that your body's immune system is working and you have an inflammatory condition in the body. Okay, does everybody understand that? So this is usually the time we pick it up. Between 1 and 2, I'm doing better now. That might be my bookie guy. Where'd I put my phone? Uh-oh. You always have to call your bookie back. Nope, my wife. All right, so now we're in stage 2, and the patient comes into the office with those complaints. And like I said, we want to check the brain, so we get a scan. Usually only let us do a CT scan. And we do, for the heart, an echo. And then other symptoms, we hope the treatment, which is an antibiotic, will help. All right? And again, the way this all works is I'm describing what I see most. I usually see stage 2 that comes into the office. Okay, I don't really see, well, I do have some farmers. I say most of my farmers, they'll come in and they have the tick with them and they'll show it to me. Okay, and that reminds me, as you take the tick out, they recommend you get a small tweezers, and as you grab it, just pull straight out. Don't move around at all, because if particles of the tick remain in your body, that can be one of the causes of chronic fatigue syndrome, because your body's immune system is constantly trying to fight that off. Does everybody follow the concept? So make sure if you see the tick, grab it and slowly pull straight out. Or get to the urgent care and let them do it. But the bottom line is, don't pull around and yank it so that particles of that still are in your skin. Does everybody understand it? All right, so What are the antibiotics that we use? Remember what we talked about. It has a double cell wall and it's a spirochete, all right? So doxycycline is still number one, and it's 3 weeks, minimum. I'll put minimum. You check the Lyme's titer, you check a sed rate, and you check the C-reactive protein, as well as the other tests, the scan of the head and the echo, all right? And what I find is a large percentage, I bet 75% of the patients, maybe even more, this does the trick, that it relieves the symptoms that they were having. They definitely notice a difference in their energy coming back, and they feel well, all right? What I failed to do probably for the first 5 years until I talked to Dr. Joseph is follow the patients up to make sure that we paid attention to how they got it and what they're doing to make sure they don't get it again. And I'm talking that the people I know that live in these wooded areas and farms, you know, they wash their clothes, they put the permethine on, and then when they come home, you take your clothes off and you throw everything into the washer, and then 10 minutes of, they call it the high degrees of the heat, and that'll kill it. You have to kill it, because if you don't, and they get on you, it just, the whole cycle starts again. And that's where we find the majority of the stage 3, which is more like a chronic condition. And those, what we find is reinfection. Not everybody, but most. And what happens is the reinfection, I didn't realize it, but when you take the tick out, if a particle or piece of it is still in there, then your body's still fighting it off. So the reinfection rate that occurs was, truthfully, they didn't get all the particles out. But that was something that they found. That's why they came up with this rigid process you have to go through if you're exposed. And you're talking, it comes in a spray, so you spray everything the night before that you're gonna wear. You know, you shower in the morning, after you go out in the wooded area, wherever it happens to be. And I'm talking about just walking through the woods. You know, that's what they recommend. So you come back, you take all your stuff off, throw it in the washer, 10 minutes of the high, you know, heat for the dryer. That's the way you prevent it from happening. And that's what they're pushing more than anything, because the potential, once you get it, and the reinfection rate, especially if you get reinfected with another tick, that's when the chronicity, when we see the most in stage 3. So everybody follow that. If you're exposed, I wouldn't think anybody here, you know, like you're walking the sidewalks, even if you walk through the grass, as long as you have socks on, as long as you have boots on or whatever, just don't go in there in bare feet and don't go in there in sandals, because there are deer everywhere. But everybody understands that, okay? So now we get to stage 3. I have a case, for those of you that ever came to my office in Bellevue, we ended up, I don't know how it happened actually. Oh, I know how it happened. This person that's a patient of mine also had a degree in physiology. And what he wanted to do was come to my office and exercise patients and do some studies, do some research. So I let him come in. And in the process, he started to work more as a medical assistant and not just doing the physical therapy. And again, long story short, he was having bad headaches and palpitations. And again, at the time, he wasn't my patient. At the time, he was working in my office because my son and he went to school together. And I think it was over a weekend, he went into the hospital and he had bradycardia, his pulse dropped down into the 30s, his blood pressure dropped down, and he had to go on full cardio support for about a week. And he was 19. Hunter lives right behind me in the wooded area and never paid attention. Oh yeah, I got bit by ticks, as if it was a frequent occurrence, and never paid attention. And when you say, what you do with it? Yeah, just brush them off. So particles were still in there. But the bottom line is, again, pay attention to what you potentially are exposed to. and deer are everywhere, everywhere. That's a good story. I have a porch that goes out like this, over and out, steps there and steps here. And I came in the house, I take a couple steps, and I hear this noise. My door is right there. And I hear this noise, and I turn, and there's a 12-point buck standing right there. And I'm thinking, I'm dead. So there's a baseball bat right there. And I'm thinking, like, all right, I'm gonna fall on the ground, grab that baseball bat, and hit it in the head. That goes through your mind. And fortunately, he walked off the porch. But that's how they're they're on my porch. Like, they're everywhere. And it drives me crazy, because I tell the people in Ross Township, like, thin the herd. Like, why do we have all these deer around? And they say they're not allowed to. I don't know what doesn't allow them to, but my point is, we have become that, let's say, diligent, especially when my granddaughters are around. Like, you know, all the clothes come off, you have to do that stuff, because otherwise they're out there. I told you I lost 4 dogs. So please pay attention. It's so important, all right? So my 19-year-old had it in the brain, the heart, and joints. I sent him up to Joe, IV ceftriaxone for 6 weeks. Does the insurance company pay for it? No. Are you allowed to be in the hospital for it? No. But you don't have to worry, because you have up on the hill. I know no one likes to go up on the hill, and I hope no one ever has to do that. But that's what the treatment is. And if you get that treatment, my patient, everything's back to normal. He's doing fine. They worried he'd have to have a pacemaker in. Everything came back. So the nice part of it is that the treatments work. The downside is we don't pay attention. And I'm guilty as a physician. You need to make sure that you prevent. What's the prevention? Clothing. Tick diligence. I'll say tick dill. What does that mean? Check yourself, and especially animals. And remove. Now, is there a way that you could cure them? No. The vaccines do not work. I spent a fortune on all my dogs. It does not work. You know, I can't say that it might not bolster your immune system to a degree, but I've not seen that there has been a true vaccination success. In fact, Glaxo took it off the market. So if a drug company that makes a product stops making it, you know they didn't succeed, or they would have kept it out. You know, so from my end, the best way that you go about doing this diligence is to be certain that you know what you're dealing with. And what you're dealing with is, if you have animals, and I would say, like, even just running in an area like this, that, you know, doesn't look like it's gonna have deer infestation, right? Wrong. There's deer, I guarantee there's 8 or 10 deer go through there every day. Guaranteed. And so what happens is ticks are on the deer. And again, I have a video. I don't think I brought it. I'll have to set it up next time. I'll actually break down and do some computer stuff. I never thought deer played around, but there's so many deer in my front yard. We had a bad rain, and there was like a big puddle that was almost a lake. And I took a video of these deers playing in the water. I've never seen them play. All I've seen them do is eat the grass and then run when I pull in. You know, but the bottom line is they're everywhere. You have to have your due diligence. You have to make sure you pay attention. Now, what do we do if we see the rash? Rash, I'll say spot. That sesame seed we talk about, it starts out as a spot. Like someone will say that they got a bite. Usually with the bite, there's some type of irritation. What we find a lot of times with the deer tick, it's just a spot on your body that you will notice, but you just happen to notice it. You didn't feel an itch, you didn't feel something that you had to rub onto. It's something that's there and you kind of stumble across it. So what you have to do is pay attention to the spot by, again, if you are in an area with a lot of deer, as we are, and if you're going to be outside, make sure you pay attention to check your skin, because that little dot might be there, okay? That's important. All right, now the other thing that what I find is that the patients will say to me that they saw this on their skin, didn't think anything of it, and then that dot, that becomes the center of the bullseye, okay? So if there's a little dot someplace on your skin that you don't worry about or something you didn't even notice, but then you see the bullseye, that's greater than 36 hours. So you need treated. What's the treatment? 3 weeks, no matter what. 3 weeks of antibiotic. And the doxycycline used to be dirt cheap. Now it's more expensive. But it's still, you have to do it. So make sure, if you see erythema migraines, it's called, if you see that, you make sure that you get the treatment. Once you get the treatment, and I would say if you see this, you know you have it, but I still do the titers. So you get the Lyme's titers, have the 3-week treatment, and then I usually bring the patients back 6 to 8 weeks later and recheck the titers. And what that shows you is the treatment benefiting and being effective? And I say yes. All right? So let me go back to these dates again. What I want to make sure everybody understands is that double cell wall and the fact it's a spirochete and can move, it's been known since 1883 in Germany. What is the time of the year that you most likely see it? Spring and summer. Why is that? The fall, there's not as many leaves, and in the wintertime, you don't have to worry. They can survive, but in the wintertime, you don't have to worry when you're walking through. You're not going to get a tick on you because you're going to be properly dressed, okay? What I find is most interesting was in 1975, when they found the Lyme's disease, it got up to 150,000 cases in a year. And they brought it down to under 40,000 now. But I look at it, it's still 40,000, and you know, well, I don't know how you can completely eradicate it, but you have to be able to do something with the deer herd. You know, because I remember when I was up there were deer all through this area where they found it. You know, so there's no doubt that the deer is the one. I think it was like 76% of the cases come from deer. So we know that. Pay attention if you're out in areas where you see the deer, because if you don't take the precautions and you get the tick bite and you don't even know it, and if 36 hours go by, then you have to be treated. All right, everybody understands that. I want to get to prevention, treatment, chronic disease. Immune system. Okay, if you end up with this process, and despite all the treatments that you've had, you still have joint pain, the chronic fatigue, or why I threw in there the psyche, what happens is patients will go so long without a diagnosis, they start to think that there's something wrong with themselves, like they're imagining things. And it actually happens. I've had cases of it. So if you get to that point, that the chronic disease that you're having, that it's still with you, and it's something that has changed your routine. What does that mean? Your joints hurt you so much you don't want to go out anymore. You forget what you're talking about in a conversation, so you don't go out with your friends as much as you used to. If you find that there's been a change, then what you want to seek out is an immunologist. Talk to your PCP, but the reason I bring this up is technology has advanced so far, from the original monoclonal antibodies that we were using to what they're doing with all types of cancer treatments now, because they've learned so much about the immune system. I find so many of my patients, when I first started, perfect, this is the one I want in here. I'm spelling it wrong. Fibromyalgia. When I first started back in 1990, Suburban General Hospital with Allegheny General, that's when I started lecturing. And what happened, I was the new doc on campus. So some girl came up to me and said, "You got a lecture." So I had just done a report on fibromyalgia. And what was remarkable was there was like over 150 people showed up, because it's so common, but no one talks about it. And that's what I found with the chronic fatigue. So I'll put chronic fatigue syndrome. And we don't still know the exact mechanism from the time you get the tick bite all the way through to the chronic disease state. We can't put all that together. And what I find it's so close to is the Epstein-Barr virus. Mononucleosis. And I have a lot of patients with fibromyalgia that have the chronic disease related to the Epstein-Barr. And I don't have a whole lot, but there's enough of my patients that have like fibromyalgia type symptoms that have had the chronic Lyme's disease over a period of time, even after all the treatment. I sent them to the immunologist and they figured it out. It's so exciting to see the technology that's out there, because we've now identified mechanisms of so many different things. But there's still diseases out there that they call syndromes, because they don't have all the answers. But they do understand the immunology. So by manipulating the immunological response, they're getting responses to these chronic diseases. And that's what I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of, that, and I think that they talk about AI being so negative, but I think the positive of it is what it can research in literally seconds versus what it takes a human being 30 years. You know, so all the technology advancements that are out there and all the things we're now finding out about the immune system and all the things we're doing with the antibodies are having such a great effect on everything from cancers to different diseases. But specifically, you'll probably see the commercials on TV, you know, related to psoriatic arthritis or rheumatoid arthritis and some of those things. The immune system manipulation is curing a lot of it and definitely helping with the symptomology. So I bring that up because if you get to the point that you yourself or someone that you know is in chronic or stage 3 of the Lyme's disease, and they've had their treatment, so they've had the IV for 6 weeks, and despite all that, they still have the fatigue. And especially the one that gets me is when people say that right in the middle of a conversation that they'll forget what they're talking about. You know, that doesn't go along with most the dementias that we are all familiar with, you know, from Alzheimer's to the, you know, the small blood vessels, etc. This is literally, they'll tell me that they're talking, they're having a conversation, and they just completely forget what they were talking about. That's different. And once again, that's why I pushed for the immunologist, because they definitely, they have an understanding. It's kind of like the geneticists that are out there. You know, it didn't take off yet, but I think it will, because what they found with gene and gene manipulation, it's a whole different science. And because of all that, I think you're gonna see it start to creep up. You know, the immunological side of it is the disease state. Remember we talked about the little piece that might still be in the body when you pull the tick out? That's enough to keep your immune system revved up the whole time. And what's the effect of that? That's where they talk about where the chronic disease sets in. And that's where you wanna try to get to the bottom of that if you can. So please pay attention to that. Make sure that when it comes to the chronic, I'll put I for immunologist. All right, now back to the rash. After treatment, if it doesn't go away, what do you do? Do you have to see a dermatologist? Do you have to see a specialist? Do you have to, it depends on how it feels. Usually it's painless, and I've had it. Usually it's painless, but if somehow it's itchy or it's bothering you or whatever, then go ahead and see the dermatologist. Might not be a bad idea. My children laugh at me, but I use the things my grandfather used to use to cure stuff. So the one I had under my arm for, geez, I bet it was probably at least 2 years. You know how I got rid of it? Vicks VapoRub. My grandfather used to eat that stuff. He would take a teaspoon and he'd eat it when he started like getting symptoms of runny nose and stuff. I thought he was crazy. But I have to say, and I didn't really treat it with a lot of things. I did the doxycycline, I did the ceftriaxone, I did all these different things because it just drove me crazy. And then I finally thought, well, if it's not gonna hurt me and everything checks out fine, I'm just gonna let it go, look for ticks. And then it was a video. And the video my sister took of my grandfather, caught him putting the Vicks up his nose and then taking a teaspoon of it. And I thought, wow, wonder if that'll work. Put it on, within 2 weeks, gone completely. You know, so it's amazing to me what I used to always talk about with the wives' tales remedies. It's pretty remarkable. You know, I still remember the first time the patient told me to put Dow soap in your bed if you get cramps in your legs. It works. All right, guys, so now, what's the future in terms of prevention? I'm not against vaccine, guys. I am not against it. Please make sure. I'm just upset because I always spend money for my dogs, and it didn't work. Vaccination. If you are a hunter, if you work in the woods, if you are in constant contact with nature, you live on a farm, or you like to go bird watching. If you guys knew my girl Darlene, she was my, probably for 25 years, she was my secretary. And one day she said, can I come out on your farm and watch birds? And I said, sure. And here she brought like 20 people with her, you know, like, because that was their group that they would all come out. And the story I tell is, I have a bridge that goes across my front yard, and as I was coming to go out one day, my son was way over here, and he was probably in 3rd grade. So I said, what the hell are you doing? I said, you're gonna miss the bus. He goes, there's a troll under the bridge. And I said, I'm gonna troll your backside if you don't get over there right now. Well, here, one day, I forgot to take the garbage out, and they come at 4 in the morning, right? So my wife wakes me up, because she reminded me I didn't take it up, so I'm pulling the garbage, and I'm not lying, that bird was that high. And its wingspan was about 6 foot, you know, and it's like, it scared the heck out of me. And so when I said that, Dar wanted to come out to see it. And it was called a blue heron. Unbelievable. But her and her whole 20 people came out because they wanted to see what it was about. So I bring that up because I didn't even realize when I came back that day there was 2 cars in the parking lot, but apparently like a bus dropped a bunch of them off. There were still 20 people in my yard and I didn't even know they were there. Like I said, they blend in so that they can see the birds. So my whole point is, you may not think you're exposing yourself, but if you're around any kind of grassy area with a bunch of trees around, protect yourself, and prevention is still the way to go. No matter what, that's still the ticket, all right? Do you get the vaccine? If you're a hunter, I say talk to your doctor. You know, I think if you're a hunter, you're pretty particular, and I think you'll check yourself out pretty good and make sure that there's no ticks on your body. And if there is one, pull it off. And again, guys, if you get it before the 36 hours it's in your system, you're not going to get the disease. You know, take the precautions. If it worries you, do 3 days of the antibiotic. But if you see it and you pull it off and you know it wasn't there before you went walking out in the woods, you got nothing to worry about. You know, so again, the prevention piece for people that are out there, and I use the hunters as the example, I think they're pretty meticulous about everything they do. But you can still make sure, talk to your doc about a vaccine. If you're a person that likes to do trails where you walk through the woods to different trails and such, I would say if you wear the proper clothing, you have nothing to worry about. But precautionary wise, talk to your doctor about the vaccine, okay? Because once again, I got upset because I was spending money. I raised shepherds for 25 years, and I spent a lot of money with the vaccine. And to have 4 dogs die, and you know, 2 of them were females that just were awesome. And I buried them in the front yard because it's still, like I said, I live on a farm, and there's something about the shepherd. If you have a couple of shepherds sitting in your front yard, no one comes down your driveway. And that was what I always liked, and it just was so frustrating. So from my end, I still think you talk to your PCP because they know best what's best for you. All right, now, from the standpoint of the 2 first ones, symptoms, you know your body. Fatigue comes in a lot of flavors. Most of it has to do with what we call ADLs, activities of daily living. What does that mean? That means that bathing, dressing, feeding, you know, shopping, cooking, cleaning, all those kind of things that you have to do in a day. We all know what we do. We know better than anybody else if there's a change in our ADLs. If you see a change, what does that mean? That if normally when you come down to your kitchen area, you readily, you know, grab, let's say you're gonna have cereal, so you reach up and you grab your cereal box and you know how much time that takes you. You know your routine, you know it to the minute because we all have to plan out our days. If you see a change in the ADLs, that's significant. That could be the first sign of the fatigue. Sorry, guys, I must have done something to my wife. No, she'll wait. I know what she's yelling at before. All right, so please pay attention. Activities of daily living. Now, it's different. We all can do something. What did I just do? I did something I didn't realize was going to make me so sore. You know, so you end up, you wake up, and all of a sudden you're having aches and pains. That's not what I'm talking about. You know, if you know what they came from, that's a whole different story. I'm talking about you haven't done anything different. It's your same routine, and now it usually takes you 20 minutes to get ready and go down to breakfast, and now all of a sudden it's 40 minutes. And you didn't do anything different, you just find you're slower than you used to be. That could be the first sign. And what does that mean? Does that mean you have, Lyme disease? Of course not. I'm talking about the fatigue. So if you notice that that's a change, you pay attention to it, you keep track of it, and then pay attention to the things you're doing. Because it could be something simple that you do, but it can definitely cause the fatigue, because if you strain something, your body knows it. So please pay attention. ADLs, activity of daily living. Sorry guys, they usually know I'm lecturing, they leave me alone. Good. All right, now again with the second one, we're gonna get the blood test, we're gonna see what the fatigue's like, If you have the lines tighter, you're gonna get 3 weeks of doxycycline. We repeat the titers in 6 to 8 weeks, and we bring you back. And if at that point in time, you're still having trouble with the ADLs and the fatigue, even if you don't have any symptoms whatsoever, I check a cardiogram, and we look to do different testing of the brain that we can do just by questions and answers. You know, it's like more formal than a mini mental test, just to see if there's any changes that we're seeing. And that's part of what we do if we feel that there's anything related because you had the treatment and we knew we had the Lyme's. After you get that done, if there's anything that we find, now we get in from the 2 to 3. So the joint pain, the fatigue, the memory changes, and this is the big one, palpitations. If you get to that point, and once again, you never had palpitations before, you never had that kind of fatigue, this is all new to you, then you definitely want to go through scan of the brain, you definitely want to get the blood tests we talked about, you definitely want to get an echo, not a cardiogram now. Cardiogram just shows you what the electrical activity in the heart is. The echocardiogram shows the chambers of the heart, so you just get more definitive testing. And once again, these are preventative strategies. We get this done to try to nip it in the bud before there's a problem. So does everybody understand it? Because it's real important, guys. We are in the area. You know, if you don't have pets and you're not out walking, you have no risk to worry about. But if by chance you are and you're going to, pay attention. If you see the tick, either slowly take it out with tweezers or get to the urgent care. All this stuff is preventable, guys. That's the main thing that we want to emphasize today. All right, does everybody follow me? All right, so what I leave you with is, ooh, I'm running out of pen. There you go. What I leave you with is, what's the future? They're going to find out more about the life cycle and ultimately figure out the true pathways of infection. What that means is it gets to you, you can't even see it. Now it grows to the size that you can actually see it and grab it if you need to. And the whole time it's been affecting your blood. And to date, we can't tell you from start to finish of what that whole process is. And that's of reading Friday. You know, 2025, we don't have that information. And it started back in 1883 was the first case. So that's the part that I look at, that's why I like AI, because I think that they're going to be able to, you know, get to the bottom of a lot more things. So that's what we see that's coming. One other thing I'll leave you with is a future treatment, and you're going to be hearing about these soon. Med beds, and they have to do with frequency. What does that mean? Not urination, it means vibration. And they're talking about how these med beds are going to help cure because they're going to bolster the immune system. So stay tuned, that's all coming out. Okay? Everybody with me? Good. Any questions, guys? Shoot.
I think I heard that there's more than one kind of tick. They're not all deer ticks. And
True.
the medicine to treat varies then depending on which kind of tick bit you, so it's important to bring the tick in.
I think that what they're finding is in different countries. In America, I think it's all pretty similar, but there's a different one in Europe, there's a different one like in the Asian area, and there's a different one in the South. But from what I gathered, and my friend Joe, like I told you, is the expert in the region, that the ceftriaxone especially has been effective with them. Good, and what else? Yes?
I don't have a question, but I can remember when we lived in Baltimore, we had a field beside us, and every night, my mom and dad would check our heads for ticks.
So they knew.
And my dad smoked, so he would take the tick and put the cigarette and then draw it out. And
Cool.
then an electric burner, and with the stove, with the burner, and then we would put the tick on the burner that would pop.
I've heard about a match. I've heard they used to do that with a match. I guess Cigarettes just as hot. That's pretty cool. That's good. Yes?
If you bring a tick in with you and it's on your clothing, what if you didn't get it washed? Does the tick, like a flea, end up in your carpeting or living, like you can get a flea infested house? Can you have a tick infested house?
No, I think because it needs the blood to be able to transmit.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. So that'll die pretty quickly if it doesn't feeding on.
Sure. And then, like I said, even just throwing it in the dryer will work. Yes?
Where do you get that from?
Any pharmacy. Any pharmacy.
Ask for that,
Probably need your doc to call it, you know, it's probably not over the counter, but you can ask, you can tell, pharmacists are pretty good that way. You can say, I think I might have got a tick bite, could you give me some of this? Actually, I think it is over the counter. I think it should be over the counter, yes. Yeah, but just pharmacists will guide you. Yes, sir.
What was that chemical that you said people were putting on their clothes? Permethine?
Yeah, Perth, min, M-I-N. I think that's how it's spelled.
Is there anything that's like a natural alternative to this great chemical? Like, is there something that ticks are killed by naturally, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of, but the places that we'd find that, the place I like is out in North Park. It's called Pharmacy, spelled F-A-R-M. And it's like the natural place. I found that's top shelf. The guy that runs it's a pharmacist. You know, so they would know. You know, as far as I'm aware, like the research we do, I don't know. Yes, sir.
I worked for the Game Commission for 25 years.
How many tick bites did you get?
I picked up over 5,000 deer.
Wow.
I've never been checked for Lyme disease.
Wow.
Although I have stiffness in my hand and my shoulder. But that was I retired in '96.
Wow.
So I picked deer up from '71 to '96.
Dead deer in the woods?
Everywhere,
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Wow.
Roadkill on the highway, dead deer in the woods, illegal kills, everything.
Amazing.
And
Amazing.
I've never been checked, although I have a blood test coming up in 6.
Yeah, just ask for the Lyme's titer. Yeah, ask for the Lyme's titer. Yeah.
But
And,
everything on me stiff right now.
well, I would say, based on what you're telling me, I would highly recommend Joe Joseph. You know, he's up in Hermitage. If that titer comes back high, go see him, because he's connected with the immunologists that are out there, and he can connect you. Yeah, because that's amazing. Yes?
Can you get bit through clothes, like through your shirt or something?
Yeah, what they say is if it falls onto the clothing, remember it's a sport, it can move. So then, yes, like if it hits your clothing and then skins around it, they talk about the neck. So cover the neck real good, so it can hit the clothes, you push a branch while you're walking through, and it comes, then it gets on the back of your jacket, and then if it can get to your neck, it'll climb to the neck and then bite you. So definitely cover everything, and then check. You know, you have to check. If you're out in the woods, check. You know, when you're done, you know, get a look at everything you can, or have someone look with you to make sure that there's no new spots on you, and definitely no tick. But yes, you can get it through clothing. It's not like it dies, you know, in the wild. It needs the, you know, the trees and stuff to stay around. Wow, man, I've never been bothered so much here, guys. They're picking on me. Yeah.
I was gonna say, cause one time I got bit by a flying ant, I didn't even know what that was.
Sure.
And I remember sitting, it was about a month ago, reading the paper and the light was on, and something bit me, I thought it was I seen something black, and I never heard of a flying ant. I thought it was a fly, I just felt something there, and I went like this, and I looked around, I thought, where'd that fly go? And it was gone. And somebody told me that was probably a flying ant, because it swelled up.
So you got bit.
Touched it right here. It wasn't a mosquito bite. I went right away. First I thought it's a little bit itchy, but I went in the bathroom, I looked, and there was a big, like, different kind of a bump, a big spot was swollen. And I had cortisone, so I put it on there.
See, doctoring yourself. Good job.
But I heard about that big sting, I had a laugh.
I told you.
A lot of things are still good.
My grandfather smoked and drank every day of his life, lived to 94 years old, and he took a teaspoon of that every night.
My dad used to soak his feet Epsom salts in a pan of water.
They all had their ways. If it
And
worked,
going
it
with
worked.
Salt water,
Sure.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Isn't there a connection between Lyme and leukemia?
Yes, if it gets into the bone marrow, yes. Yeah, that's a good question. Neutropenia is when the neutrophils in the body go down.
Yeah, because I have a friend that lives up in Connecticut, she has neutropenia. And I said, maybe you should check the Lyme.
Definitely, definitely.
So how does it progress to that? Would that show up in?
Well, what happens is it gets into your bloodstream. And once it's in your bloodstream, it travels all through the body. Where we see the most symptoms is the ones I put up. But it can get into the bone marrow as well, you know, and it can affect the immune system or the neutrophils, and it is a bacteria. So after a period of time, even if they regenerate themselves as the body will, if it's a chronic condition, they'll go down. So it's definitely worth getting the Lyme's tighter. And if it's positive, get to the expert, you know, like find out who the expert in the area is, you know, because that's who you want is someone, the guy I know, Joe Joseph, that's all he does now. His whole practice is just seeing Lyme's disease patients, and he gets people from all over the world comes and sees them, and he sees thousands of patients. That's why I told you when he gave me grief that you're in Pittsburgh. You know, what do you mean? You should be seeing more cases. It's remarkable. Yes.
I had a friend that owned a horse, and she got Lyme disease.
Sure.
And, we went to visit her, and she was very tired.
All the time. Yeah, that's the fatigue. Yeah. Yes.
Did he say leukemia?
No, neutropenia.
What is that?
That's a condition of the blood cells in your body that fight bacteria. Instead of them being at a normal level, they're low.
Leukemia.
Neutropenia.
When you were talking about vaccines, you meant vaccines for pets, didn't you, like advanced?
No, people. It's
I
for
didn't
people
know
too.
there was for
Yeah.
people.
They quit making it, but yes.
Oh, that's the one you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. Other questions, guys? Yes.
I have a girlfriend that has scleroderma.
Mhm.
She had a severe tick bite that has given her a heart attack.
I don't think for that, because that's pretty extensive. You know, certain types of arthritis, they do see more with rheumatoid, because the body's immune system fights the joints, so it looks like rheumatoid. I've not seen, scleroderma is pretty extensive to the body. I haven't seen it, and I haven't read it, and I read through. So I would think that's low, but talk to the, get a titer. It's,
It seemed like an odd coincidence. She got that after the tick bite.
Yep.
That was a bad tick
that would definitely, see the expert, get her up to see Joe. It's good.
Where's he again?
Pardon me?
Hermitage.
Hermitage. Yeah, what do they call that? There's another name for it up there. I forget.
Near West Middlesex.
Yeah, it's up 79, you get off,
Absolutely
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah, but it's, he's been doing it now for 35 years. And like I said, I've sent chronic cases and he's got them better, you know. And like I said, hopefully the future shows us the cause and effect, guys. Good deal, thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for having me.